Hey, lovely leaders. Welcome to the Not Your Dad's Leadership Podcast. My name is Lindsey, your host, and I'm your go to girly for all things feminine leadership, self love, and soft skill integration. So happy you're here. How are you doing? I hope you've been taking really good care of yourself. I am proud to report that I have been living life and enjoying it. And after, being cooped up after the fires and cooed up, get it? Because our government is in a coup. We just wanted to go have some fun. So we went to Big Bear over the weekend, over President's Day weekend. And it was me and my husband and my father in law. And it was so much fun. And it was kind of this eye opener of like, why aren't we going on these weekend trips a lot more? They skied and snowboard, and I just kind of explored the city and the lake. And it had just snowed like a foot of snow. So it was so pretty up there. Um, yeah. And we just kind of realized like this is our 13th year in LA. And neither of us had been to Big Bear. And it's kind of crazy. But then I think back to it. And I basically spent like the first 8 years of my life in LA just working. And when I wasn't working, I just wanted to be laying down because I worked like 12, 14-hour days and then I would travel for 30 days at a time. So when I was home, I just wanted to be home. So, and then of course the pandemic took away at least like 3 to 4 years. So now that life is actually coming back, it is great to know that we can just go on these little weekend trips. So it was so much fun. If you have any other good weekend trips around LA, please let me know. We've done Santa Barbara. I've done Desert Hot Springs, not really Palm Springs. But yeah, we just want to take like these little either like day trips or weekend trips. So let me know your faves. Then we went line dancing last weekend at this new place in our neighborhood. And then on Sunday, since it was like 80 degrees, I we were able to lay by the pool and get some sun in, which was amazing. And I finished this audiobook of this book called Invisible Monsters by Chuck Palahniuk. Has anyone read this book? I need like to discuss it with someone like right now. I feel like I already need to reread it. It was such a ride, I will say. But yeah, I need to discuss. So DM me. Okay. So today we are talking about a new approach to emotional intelligence. And I want to introduce you to a new way of thinking about emotional intelligence and how to add emotional intelligence to your leadership practice in this way. So let's just get into it. Okay. So, you know how sometimes you hear a concept that sounds right, and, everyone is learning this. It's a skill that you put on your resume, but when you actually like try to apply it, like it just isn't clicking. And that's really how I felt when I started learning about emotional intelligence. And I thought, emotional intelligence, that's great. Like everyone should be learning this. And it had, there's self awareness, there's self regulation, there's mastering your emotions, right? All the things that we should be doing. But the deeper I went and the more I thought about it, I just really did not vibe with emotional intelligence at all. Like it really gave me the ick. Like this visceral reaction in my body. Like when you look at Google images and it has like quadrants and bullet points about how to maintain your emotions, it just really felt weird to me. And, after looking at these images and reading a few articles about really how emotional intelligence is being taught out there, it really hit me that emotional intelligence teaches you to use your head. It keeps us in our heads. It turns emotions into something to be analyzed and categorized and managed. And here is a problem with that. Emotions aren't meant to be managed, they're meant to be felt. Because tell me if this sounds familiar. You feel something big coming up, and instead of letting yourself feel it, your brain immediately goes into that fix it mode. You tell yourself, okay, I need to calm down. I need to be rational. I need to not let this affect me too much. Or worse, you judge yourself for having those feelings at all. And this is exactly where emotional intelligence loses me. It teaches us to understand our emotions, but it doesn't teach us to actually process them. So today, we're going to talk about what emotional intelligence is missing and why emotional embodiment is what we should be aiming for instead. So I just want to start with, what emotional intelligence actually is. What are the 5 pillars of emotional intelligence? And they are self-awareness, self-regulation, motivation, empathy, and social skills. And I love all of those. Like, don't get me wrong. Those are all great things. But my problem is that it turns emotions into like a checklist. Like, if you can just master these 5 areas, congrats. Like, you are now emotionally intelligent. You did it. Way to go. But emotions don't work like that. You don't earn them, you don't control them, and you don't graduate from them once you've checked off all the boxes. Emotions aren't meant to be just a skill set, they're meant to be experienced. There's just so much more that goes into emotional intelligence, so much that goes untaught and unspoken. Things like, what happens when your body completely shuts down in a tough conversation, even though you know how to regulate your emotions? You freeze, your words get stuck, you leave the meeting feeling frustrated because, why couldn't you feel like, why couldn't I just say what I wanted to say? And what about the guilt that you feel for even having emotions in the first place? You get angry and then immediately you're like, oh, I shouldn't be this upset. I should be able to handle this better. Emotional intelligence tells you to manage it, but it doesn't tell you what to do when the shame creeps in afterward. And then also, like, what about the fact that you're not just a leader, you're a whole human being with a life outside of work? Emotional intelligence doesn't account for the days when you're running on 2 hours of sleep because your baby was up all night, or when you're pushing through the workday with a migraine, or when you're trying to stay professional while secretly going through a breakup. You can know how to regulate your emotions, but what happens when your body and your heart are already exhausted before the workday even begins? Or the moments where your emotions feel so strong that self regulation isn't even an option, like when your boss gaslights you in front of your team, or when a coworker takes credit for your idea, or when someone makes a passive aggressive comment that feels so personal, but you're at work, so you have to pretend that it didn't bother you. Emotional intelligence teaches you to stay composed in the moment, but it doesn't teach you how to actually process that rage in a way that doesn't eat you alive. And, also, what about the way emotions don't just exist in your mind? They live in your body. You can intellectually know that you're safe, that you're capable, that you're not too much. But if your nervous system is stuck in fight or flight, it doesn't matter. Your heart races, your stomach is in knots, your throat tightens, and your body is screaming at you. And no amount of logic is going to override that. Those are the parts that go unspoken. And this is what traditional emotional intelligence misses. And this is why I struggle with the way that we have been taught leadership, because traditional leadership, whether it's emotional intelligence, professionalism, or whatever else, has this obsession with control. So, if emotional intelligence is about analyzing and managing emotions, what's emotional embodiment? So, emotional embodiment is about actually accepting, feeling, and processing the emotions in your body. Instead of labeling them as good or bad, instead of trying to control them, we learn to work with them. It's about trusting yourself enough to be with your emotions rather than suppressing them or over intellectualizing them. So here's the difference between these two approaches. Emotional intelligence says, understand your emotions so you can regulate them. Emotional embodiment says, feel your emotions so you can move through them. And that's a massive shift. Because the second you try to regulate an emotion, you're treating it like a problem to be solved. But emotions aren't problems, they're information, they're energy moving through your body. And if you don't let them move, they get stuck in your body. They turn into stress, tension, resentment, burnout. Like, think about the last time you were really overwhelmed. Maybe work was piling up. Maybe you were stretched so thin. Maybe something triggered you emotionally. Now, imagine that in that moment, instead of trying to manage it, you just let yourself feel it fully feel it with no judgment, no fixing, just sitting with it. Because the truth is, your body already knows what to do with emotions. If you just stop getting in the way and get out of your head and into your body, it will naturally process them. But a lot of the times we don't trust that. And we've been taught not to trust that. Instead, we suppress, we intellectualize, we say, I shouldn't feel this way, or let me make sure I'm being rational about this. But has that ever worked for you? And has it ever actually worked for anyone? Has trying to stay professional when you're actually upset ever made you feel better? Has ignoring your exhaustion ever given you more energy? No, because emotions don't disappear just because you refuse to acknowledge them. They just get louder in other ways through stress, burnout, or just snapping at people when you don't mean to. And this is where emotional embodiment changes everything. So let's talk about your nervous system for a second, because this is the real missing piece. Your nervous system is designed to feel, to register energy, and to move you through emotions. But when we're constantly suppressing, our nervous system gets stuck in that fight or flight mode. And when you're leading from fight or flight, that energy leaks out everywhere. Like, have you ever walked into a meeting and no one's saying anything's wrong, but the energy just feels really off? That is unprocessed emotion. And then the opposite is true too. When you're leading from a place of emotional embodiment, when you trust yourself to feel and love yourself, no matter what emotion is going on, it changes everything, because people don't just listen to your words, they feel your energy. Your energy speaks louder than words. So if you're constantly managing your emotions instead of trusting them, your team will feel that. If you're stressed but trying to act professional, they'll feel that too. And they'll know something's up. But when you actually let yourself experience emotions, when you move through them instead of suppressing them, you become a safer, more grounded leader. You start leading in a way that feels good, not just in a way that looks good. And that is what true leadership is supposed to be. And for me, and I've talked about on previous episodes, like I used to think strong leadership meant just like keeping it together, being professional, not letting emotions get in the way. And all that did was leave me so exhausted and always sick because I was just suppressing emotions into my body. I was abusing alcohol. I was using food to like eating my emotions. And I was constantly taking anger out on like my coworkers and my team, people around me, and the people that I loved. And if I wasn't taking my anger out on them, I was literally just avoiding people altogether. Like if someone would like slight me when I was like 5 years ago, I just would literally just stop talking to you. And that's not okay to do to people. Um, because I didn't trust myself to handle the emotions of having the conversation with that person to tell me, hi, you're hurting my feelings, or like this action that you took really wasn't okay with me. Like I didn't trust myself to have those conversations. And, now that I've started fully embodying my emotions, I, know that no matter what happens, I can handle it. So the moment that I gave myself that permission to feel my emotions without trying to control them or making them more acceptable or like palatable to people, I did start leading better and I started feeling better and my relationships improved. And really, in this past year, I was doing a lot of healing work around psychological and narcissistic abuse that I've experienced stemming from toxic workplaces. And while I did really need to work on like what was going on in my head and my mind and my thoughts, because it was not a fun place. My healing journey like really, really started moving faster when I started getting into my body with like EFT, trauma informed yoga, and just other somatic healing practices. And it really changed the most when I literally just started feeling it's okay to feel this. Like, it's okay. I trust you. I trusted myself. And that's when I felt like my nervous system finally relaxed and I could get into my body and process in the way that I needed to. Not when I asked myself, where's this stemming from? Not when I asked myself, how could I do better next time? And not by like ruminating and hating myself, just by saying it's okay to feel this emotion and then processing the emotion in a healthy way. And we have so many voices coming from so many different places telling us how to be and who to be and how to act. And it stops us from trusting ourselves and accepting what we are truly feeling. At the end of the day, I just needed to get out of my head and into my body and into acceptance so I could process these emotions in a helpful, healthy way. And I actually showed up more fully because I wasn't using all my energy to fight myself and suppress. And I just had so much more energy and so much more trust in myself. And that just helps you grow so much as a leader and as a human being. And yeah, I do want to add a caveat to this and say that I am not perfect at this. I am not a perfect human being. I've had to be really real with myself about that. Perfection is a myth, and I am perfectly imperfect. So there are times when I still mess up, I still have outbursts, and I still ignore my emotions sometimes. Like sometimes I just don't have you know, the capacity. And once you have started practicing emotional embodiment, you know that it's there, that you can always come back and just experience the emotion, even if it's hard, even though if you might put it off for a few days, you know, I always come back to it. I'm like, all right, girly, I think it's time that we actually like, process this emotion through our body. And, sometimes that means just like crying, just laughing. Sometimes we just have to laugh. Even though the world is really dark right now, sometimes we just still need to laugh. Sometimes we need to scream. Um, I remember on election night, I just went and into my bathroom and just screamed at the top of my lungs because that's what I felt I needed to do to get the emotion out of my body. And, with everything that's happening in the world, we can't afford to be pushing anything down and ignoring our real emotions. Like, we need to be processing these emotions so we can handle, whatever is coming next and whatever's coming around the corner. So, whether you're leading a team or you're leading your family or you are leading yourself, just try embodying your emotions. Try naming, accepting, and feeling the emotion instead of looking at it as intellectualizing, controlling, and regulating. And there's nothing wrong with any of those things. Is the way that we want them to work in harmony together. We can't just do one thing or the other. We also sometimes just need to get out of our heads and into our bodies. And there are times for each. There are times to really reflect and wonder why you're feeling like this. But in order to like complete the emotional cycle, we also need to get into our bodies and process instead of ignore and suppress. So, here's what I want you to do. The next time that you feel something big or something small, whether it's stress or frustration or sadness, like anything, pause for a second. Instead of telling yourself to just get it together and, tighten up, just notice it. Let it be there, welcome it, and tell yourself that it's okay to feel like this and notice how your body feels, just accepting and trusting yourself. Because sometimes you just don't have to fix it. Sometimes you just have to be and, let it simmer and do what it needs to do to process through your body. Because at the end of the day, you're a human. So, what if you just let yourself be human just for a second? And, that's what emotional intelligence is missing. And that's why emotional embodiment is the skill behind the skill of emotional intelligence. All right, girlies, that is it for this episode. It is always a pleasure to get to hang with you. And if any of this resonated, just send me a DM at the Self Love Knowing or leave a comment. Like, tell me what landed or what you have more questions about, and we can dive deeper into emotional embodiment. I know it's a very ethereal thing to talk about, but this practice is life changing and it should definitely be added to your leadership practice. So, let me know what you want to know in part two. And yeah, I hope you have a great rest of your week, and I will see you next time. Bye.